Hello, everybody. I'm Julie Lytle. I'm the Director of Distributed and Lifelong Learning at Bexley Seabury Seminary. And I'm so pleased to be sponsoring this program with the Association for Episcopal Deacons. We've been offering these free monthly webinars on the second Thursday of the month now for 6 years. So we're in our 6th year of doing Deacons Talking. It was a program that was started as a way for deacons to walk with each other and to share stories that can animate and support and renew, hopefully, your ministries. It's inspired by the disciples that were walking on the road to Emmaus, who were, after recounting all of the things that they had lost, realized there was a stranger in their midst that they recognized as Jesus, and were able to celebrate all of the possibilities with the resurrected Christ with confidence and go forth from there to serve. And it's those kinds of stories that we hope we can share together. Tonight, we're blessed to have Deacon Roxy sharing about her experience with prisoners. And next month, if you save November 9th, we have Marty Hagen, who's going to be able to share with us about diaconal formation and theological education. So Maureen, thank you for being with us next month. Make sure everybody puts that date and time on your conversation. As I said, this is being recorded and it'll be available on the Province One website under Diaconal Ministries. So feel free to share the link with the program after the fact with your friends. And so now, Roxy, would you like to start us, please, with prayer?
Yes, let us pray. Oh God, you made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be with all of you. I see some friends facing me, and I'm just delighted to be here to offer something about my ministry that I am so very passionate about. And so I begin with prisoners like you've never seen before. Late February 1989, the Honorable Joe Gary's courtroom, there to finalize my divorce. I arrived too early for civil cases to be heard, and as I take my seat, I see 4 Gallatin County inmates in orange jumpsuits, wrists and ankles shackled, standing before the judge. I move closer to my attorney, Bill Bartlett, and I whisper in his ear, "These guys are creeping me out." I am thinking, surely they are a dangerous lot, and fear grips me to my very core. Fast forward 16 years later, I begin my visiting at the Gallatin County Detention Center, December 26, 2005. Here begins my journey of seeing prisoners like I have never seen them before. I introduce you to Sean, accused of a murder on Huffine Lane in Bozeman, Montana. He's in his early 20s. He's a former student at Montana State University, a former member of the Montana State University Bobcat football team, a drug addict, flashy drug dealer. He's a Black. He's funny. He has a smile that is very contagious. He makes me smile. He possesses the most beautiful hands I've ever seen. I cannot resist telling him this. His long, elegant fingers surely have received a football easily. We visit weekly for many months. I ask him to teach me football. I tell him that the game befuddles me at times, and so he draws 4 plays, and during one of our visits, moves his chair beside me and teaches me the game of football, a game he clearly loves. He's a patient, gentle teacher. He also loves to share his faith with me. Amazing insights coming from a criminal. I wonder about that criminal image. He ain't acting like one. Somehow in my mind, he just doesn't look like one. Somewhere along the way, he tells me that he was in 69 foster homes before he was 9 years old. A criminal or a heart and soul possessor? I learn over time that he is the peacemaker in his crowded pod at the jail. He never gets written up. Over the months we visit, he becomes my teacher about heart and soul. Indeed, he has them both. I find myself feeling honored and very privileged to be in his presence. He has become my friend. He gets sentenced to 50 years in prison. I think of him often. He will always be the prisoner like I have never seen before. Tate, 30 years old when I meet him. He's been incarcerated since the age of 13. He's become a meth addict during a stint at Montana State Prison. He's the father of a 4-year-old, but just can't seem to get off meth. In jail for some months, he manages to do well. He's so very honest. One of the most honest inmates I have yet to meet. I ask him if his son is enough of an excuse to stop using. Roxy, I wish I could say yes, but I cannot. I just cannot. I continue to see him at the detention center. He's always glad to see me. And over the 7 months he is there, things seem to go well. He is released to treatment court. The court wants to give him a chance. He'll be an experiment. Will he, with his background, be able to make it? He doesn't. He finds himself in his driveway crying. He just cannot kick the ugly habit. The next time I visit him at the detention center, he's really out of it, strung out on meth. I'm glad he wants to see me. I touch his arm, attempt to assure him that people care about him, that we want him to recover. And he says, I don't want to do the work. I don't want to do the work. Honest, so very honest. I know he has a heart and a soul. I just know he does. A prisoner like I've never seen before. A prisoner in bondage to a drug he cannot seem to kick. Someone I will not forget. I wonder what will become of him. Is death his only way out? Sarah, a talented art teacher, jewelry maker, a lover of beautiful rocks, diminutive, in her late 50s, accused of attempted deliberate homicide and aggravated burglary, a victim of a serious brain injury. She can't remember the details surrounding the crime she's accused of perpetrating. I see her many times over the many months she waits for her trial to begin. I often wonder if a defense is feasible in her case. It is a tough one, to be sure. I'm there on the day of her sentencing. She gets 100 years and will be eligible for parole at the age of 84. She now resides at Montana Women's Prison in Billings. She has asked that I come visit, and I do. Heart and soul, she has both. She writes recently, I'm taking Tai Chi and I really like it. It is relaxing. I never thought I'd enjoy it, but I do. So I keep trying new things. They also have art classes here, Roxy, once a month, sponsored by the Yellowstone Art Museum. I sign up for those. They take only a limited number of participants, so it's never a sure thing that I will get in and be able to go. Good to hear from you, Roxy. Looking forward to seeing you. Keep me in your prayers. Always, Sarah. So how in the world did this deacon come to know these and other incarcerated at the Gallatin County Detention Center? Who challenged me to answer the call? I'm in prison. You, yes, you come visit me. On a fall Sunday in 2005, I found myself reading Matthew 25, 31 to 46 in the gospel book at St. James Episcopal Church in Bozeman. As I turned around to take the book back to the altar, here's what I heard. I want you in that place. Stop fighting it. I've been nudging you for years to go into a prison. Now you go. And that was God. Totally and completely amazing. And so it came to me that a friend of mine was the clerk of district court, the administrator of district court. So I called Dorothy and I said, I need to go into the detention center. I've been called for years to go in and do this ministry. It's time to go. Can I talk to somebody at the jail to see if I can't get in there? They don't have any ordained women. They have a narrow Christian perspective. She said, sure, I'll get the jail commander to come and see you. And that's Brian Gutkin, who now is the sheriff of Gallatin County. Dorothy arranged a meeting between the two of us. We sat down together in her office and he said to me, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to provide spiritual care to the inmates at Gallatin County Detention Center. Oh, we got that covered, he said. And I said, no, you don't. You don't have one ordained woman in there, and you have a fairly narrow Christian perspective. And I would like to come in and just provide spiritual care. He said, okay, we can arrange that. So then Sergeant Jamie Young called me on the phone and said, I hear you want to come in and do services. I said, no. Well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to come in and talk to inmates about anything that they care to talk about. He said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll call you when there's somebody who wants to see you. And I said, no. How are they going to know to call me when they don't know me? He said, okay. So when do you want to start? And I said, I'll start the day after Christmas. So on December 26th, 2005, I arrived at the old Gallatin County Detention Center, built in 1979 to hold 39 inmates. And by the end, when we tore it down, it was housing well over 80. And I started my ministry on that night. I went up to that door. I pressed the button on the right-hand side. But before I did, I said, God, you called me here, you better go in and go with me, because I have no idea what I'm doing. I went in and saw 6 inmates that night, and away I went on my ministry. So just exactly what do I do at the current Gallatin County Detention Center? Well, what I do is I spend all day with God. That's what I do. And when I leave the house in the morning, Connie says, have a great day with God. So I step through those doors and I do Monday and afternoon devotions. Now, right now we're doing teleconferencing, so I'm going in by telephone, but normally I would go in and visit. And I bring the message of the God of grace, not the God of law. And I see anywhere from 6 to 20 inmates every week, sometimes more, sometimes less. So I do these devotions, and thanks to Jackie Curie Lemon, who's the program director, I've been able to go in since the new jail was dedicated in 2011 all day on Mondays. So this afternoon, I concluded my telephone calling at 4 o'clock. Then I get to do one-on-one visits also. This is the door I go through to get back to the back of the jail, to where the pods, where the inmates are. And right now, they know me so well, all I have to do is push the button, they push the button, and sometimes I get a good morning, but I don't get, who are you and what can we do for you? So I do one-on-one visits also, and those are by request. And I also go to the district court to provide spiritual support. But what you're going to see right now, before we jump to that place, is the inside of the Gallatin County Detention Center. I'm very proud because you're going to hear a little bit later where my ministry led me, and it led me to advocacy. And I worked hard to get this jail built and dedicated in 2011. There on the right-hand side, you see the iPod. This is the largest men's pod in the detention center. And what you see on the left is the actual place that the officers do direct supervision by looking in all the pods on the east side, and this also occurs on the west side. One-on-one visits. This is an inmate that I visited, and actually the Chronicle did a little bit of an article, Bozeman Daily Chronicle, on my ministry. And then I go to court, as I said, to provide spiritual support. And this is whoops, and there it is. That's the courtroom, one of the courtrooms at the Law and Justice Center. And Con, can we back up and see a picture of the Law and Justice Center? And also, if you back up one more, now, because of COVID, I'm doing a professional visitation in a room that is full of glass and a speaker in the middle so that I keep myself and the inmates safe from COVID. And that's happening right now. And that is by special request. So I get from Jackie Curie Lemon, whose picture was shown just a little while ago, I get requests from inmates to go and see them, and I call and make appointments. I also do support following release. And so this is an example of work that we do. That's me on the, let's see, I guess the right-hand side of the left-hand side of the picture. And so this is a group that I ran for 11 years called Survivors. These were people that were recovering drug and alcohol addicts and also had met in incarceration. The little gal on the right-hand side, Teresa Shy, a recovering meth addict, member of St. James Episcopal Church. She was featured on Christmas Day in a story in the Bozeman Daily Chronicle. I'm so very proud of her. She's a mom of grown children. She has a job, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person in my life. And I'm very, very proud to have her as my friend and to know that God used me in these two cases to help people after they are released. I also want to speak about one guy that we don't have a picture of that has been clean for 12 years. And he started out with me in Survivors many, many years ago. He is going to college. He has his own painting business. I did his wedding. This is the kind of support that I can offer after release. And it touches my heart to see people who get care and love and know God and the love of God, how it is so transformative. So that's what I do in a nutshell. If you have any additional questions, please ask. My ministry, surprisingly, has driven me to advocate for those who are considered by society as throwaways. And so I'd like to speak briefly about the things that I have been involved in because of this ministry. Little did I know in 2005 that I would be doing the things that I have done and am doing today. So the first thing that I bring to your attention is I was chair of the Bond Action Committee in 2009 to get the new jail built. That is Brian Gutkin, sheriff, dedicated in 2011. It currently has space for 200 inmates and runs over 40 programs and offers some 160 volunteers opportunities to care. I couldn't be more proud of all of the people on that bond action committee that helped us get this wonderful facility built. And it was the third time it appeared on the ballot, and this time it was a charm. It passed 3-1. I also, as a part of the Gallatin County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, I represent the Faith Committee on that council. I co-chaired the Gallatin County Recidivism Task Force. And the other co-chair is the gentleman on the upper left, Marty Lambert, who was the county attorney. And we worked 5 years to get this program launched. It took a task force of over 50 individuals and representing over 50 different organizations in Gallatin County, already working with those formerly and currently incarcerated. And we had an executive committee of 12 that met constantly to create and implement in 2014 with the support of Sheriff Brian Gutkin, a program that is now called Fresh Start. He told me, "Don't worry, Roxy, I'll get the money to launch." There were times when I threw the glove on the table and said, "I can't do this anymore." I was up against a county commission, and we had no data that such a program would work. We did have a good program in Rapid City, South Dakota, that we brought to Bozeman and looked at their program and designed our program after theirs, a good reentry program. And so I am grateful, and that program now is still going, and I am so pleased that with the information that we gathered in that first year that that program, which was designed to prevent recidivism, we cut recidivism from 37% to 11% in 1 year. And I think the county commissioners were pretty pleased about that. Never knew that I would be involved in such a project as this, and it's still going. In 2015, I was nominated by the Montana Association of Christians and appointed by Governor Steve Bullock to serve on the 2015-17 15-member Montana Commission on Sentencing to look specifically at ways to reallocate funding within the criminal justice system to reduce jail and prison occupancy. In the 20 months that we worked, we created 12 pieces of legislation. We introduced them in 2017 Montana legislative session. Our legislature meets only once every 2 years for 90 days. And out of those 12 pieces of legislation proposed, 9 were enacted. It's expected that it will take some 10 to 15 years to see all of our work done in this commission come to fruition. But mind you, we are watching it very closely. I'm proud to have been part of a group of people to make this happen. In 2018 and 19, I joined the Montana State League of Women Voters Study Committee on the criminal justice system in Montana. The committee completed over 200 interviews with those in law enforcement, the legal system on both sides, jail commanders, Department of Corrections people, and we found that we must address substance abuse and mental health in Montana's criminal justice system if we are going to see any reform or any help in reducing incarceration. We have to take care of people who are sick. And so that was a wonderful thing to be a part of. We'll be watching and lobbying during the 2021 Montana legislative session on legislation to oppose or approve bills that relate to the League's revised position on the criminal justice system in Montana. As I said, with particular focus on working for restorative justice around substance abuse and mental health issues. For 9 years to now, I'm a certified volunteer at the Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge. Not visiting right now because of COVID, but usually I make quarterly visits to meet those inmates that I've met at the Gallatin County Detention Center. I love going up to see them, and on average, I visit about 5 to 6 inmates in these visits. Currently, right now, 2017 to the present, I'm a council member volunteer for Freedom in Christ Prison Ministry, a Montana Synod Evangelical Lutheran Church of America project. We have a full-time Lutheran pastor in the Montana State Prison, and I'm proud to be a part of that. You can see the gentleman on the right-hand side in the middle of that picture with a beard. That's Rob Nedbellick. He is a felon himself, and he is a wonderful leader of these men at Montana State Prison. And I am proud to go up and work with him at his services at the same day that I usually do my visits. I'm also a member of the Gallatin County Restorative Justice Council. There are 4 of them. They meet once a month on a Monday night, and we deal with people who are remanded to the program by the court who have committed misdemeanors. What are my inmates teaching me every week about God's transformative love working in their lives and mine? One thing I have to keep in mind is that 85% of people who go to prison are probably able to benefit from those good resources that we should put in place to help them become the people that I truly believe God has made. And so I remember that 85%. I am told by those who work in the system that about 15% do not recover. They are difficult to help. So one thing that I keep in mind is that love wins. And God's grace working through our grace-filled hearts transforms. And to look at others with the eyes of God's heart is the command that I have taken seriously from God. And that each whom I meet is a child of God. And my constant message is God loves you, and there isn't anything you can do to make God love you less or love you more. Nothing, 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 nothing. I have learned over my years that offering care, healthy compassion, produces amazing transformation. And I am so blessed to be a co-creator with God in this ministry, because I know without God, I could not do what I am being called to do every week for all these 15 years of going into the Gallatin County Detention Center. I want to read something to you because I think we have some doggone hard work to do. We've got some really important work to do in this area of criminal justice, where fathers, brothers, mothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, your neighbor, they are the people who are incarcerated. And we must never forget that. I want to read something to you from Winning at Losing When Criminal Justice Fails by Dennis A. Shalene, a retired Minnesota district judge. He writes, "We want them to have self-worth, so we destroy their self-worth. We want them to be responsible, so we take away all responsibilities. We want them to be a part of our community, so we isolate them from our community. We want them to be kind and loving people, so we subject them to hate and cruelty. We want them to quit being the tough guy, so we put them where the tough guy is respected. We want them to quit hanging around losers, so we put all the losers in the state under one roof. We want them to be positive and constructive, so we degrade them and make them useless. We want them to be trustworthy, so we put them where there is no trust. We want them to be nonviolent, so we put them where there is violence all around them. We want them to stop exploiting us, so we put them where they exploit each other. We want them to think like normal people, so we put them where their fellow inmates think as they do, reinforcing each other's losing beliefs and lifestyle. We want them to take control of their lives, their own problems, and quit being parasites, so we make them totally dependent on us." I want to mention too, healing communities, because we're all people of faith here. We're deacons. We are deacons. And I want to hold an idea up to you tonight called healing communities. What happens to people that I meet is they get hot to trot for Jesus. Oh boy, they get so excited about their faith. And where are you from, Roxy? What church do you go to? And they get out, and churches don't accept them. They got tattoos. They got a record. They got something. They're different. And so they get excited about God and God's love, and they want to go to a place where they can be a part of where that exists, and we don't embrace them. And I think that's a challenge for us. We, as people of God, as servants of God, need to think about this. Think about ways in which we invite people who maybe don't look like us, work the way we do. Maybe they've had troubles, but to bring them in, embrace them into our congregations. That's a healing community. And I'm proud to say that St. James in Bozeman has become one of those healing communities. When somebody gets up and says, I got a birthday today, I'm 1 year clean, the place explodes in great joy. So think about your congregation and how you can be a healing community. This new book that's coming out by Bishop Michael Curry says it for me. Love is the way. Love is the way. And I'd like to say that Sean, Tate, and Sarah have been my teachers about heart and soul. For no matter what, undeniably, each of us have them, and each of us can experience God's transformative love. I will always be grateful to all the prisoners, these prisoners, who have so touched my life, the likes of whom I would never have seen before if I had not responded yes to God's call to serve in this precious ministry. All that I visit are my encouragers, my challengers, my supporters, to see for myself, to absolutely know, to believe that in God we find the love, the grace of God. We find the truth. I really thank you all for joining me tonight as I've shared my story about prisoners I've never seen before. And I hope those of you who are involved in the ministry can relate to some of the things that I have said tonight. And I want to thank all of you for joining me on this road, Deacons Talking on the Road to Emmaus. Thank you so much.
So Roxy, we have some questions I think you can easily get to.
I'd absolutely love that.
Okay, how do the inmates indicate whether or not they want to talk with you?
Well, that's a really interesting question. How would they know to talk to me? Well, these are generally people who come to my morning and afternoon devotions. So they kind of take a little chance when they come to see me, right? And so, and they really, we offer morning devotions every day of the week, except for, well, we offer it on Sunday also. So there are different people coming in. So I get to build a relationship with them when they come in to be with me for devotions. And then they send a note to Ms. Jackie.
Jackie, or Roxy, would you please say who you take in for devotions every day?
Oh, I take in men and women, and I start usually on the east side with the women, and then I just go pod by pod and see them and are there all morning and most of the afternoon.
I mean, who's your spiritual boyfriend you take in?
Oh, that guy. Oh, well, one of the things that I use in my devotions is Rob Bell, and I use his Pneuma project. If anybody has used the 24 DVDs, I like his theology, and it's a different message than they often get. So he usually goes with me, and I'm sorry I didn't bring a picture, but I met him in 2017 in San Antonio, the Festival of Homiletics. And I said, thank you so much. I was hoping he wasn't a jerk. Thank you so much. I take you in with me every week to the Gallatin County Detention Center, and my inmates love you. And he said, inmates? And I said, yes, inmates. Anyway, he ended up signing a note to them. Grace and peace and love to all of you, Rob Bell. And anyway, so yep, I take him with me. And then I take other programs. I love the Forward Movement Good Book Club. That's a really good resource. And if you want to know anything else, you can ask.
So can you tell more about how Fresh Start works?
Fresh Start, thank you so much for asking. It is a reentry program, and basically it's a discharge planning program. So closer to the time that an inmate is going to get out, they meet with our coordinator and they plan a personal plan for when they get out. We figure we have about 48 hours to keep somebody going in the right direction. And so if they have a chance to visit with the coordinator about housing, education, jobs, medical concerns, all of that, then they meet with the person and a plan is devised. Then once they're out, there is case management afterwards. And the person who is the coordinator, in our case, Julia Henry, continues to meet with the person until. And it's a really exciting program. And what we do is we set people up for success and not failure.
So to what aspects of the program do you attribute the recidivism results? Anything particular? Any trends that you've observed about why the recidivism rate has gone down?
I think it's the case management. I think it's the walking with the inmate after discharge, holding accountability, working with them, encouraging them, supporting them. I absolutely think that that is the reason why that program succeeds. And also the inmates themselves, the former inmates, work together. One of the parts of the strategic plan is to work and support one another through peer support. So they have somebody in their corner. And I think really one of the great things about the relationships that those of us who go in and do devotions and one-on-one visits is that we're available also after release. They can come and continue to build a relationship with us. And I think that I want to underscore smart compassion. If those of you who work in this, you know, that I hope you understand that. In other words, there are things we do and there are things we don't do. And we certainly don't want to enable. But really, when you build a relationship and they see you as a person who loves God and is there for them because of my relationship or our relationship with God, it really keeps them going. So Dennis, 12 years clean. Teresa, meth addict, now 6 or 7 years clean. There are lots and lots of those stories that reflect the fact that there is care, there's support, there's a plan.
Roxy, I have a request to have you put in the chat the quote from Dennis Chalene. Maybe I can get that from you and I can put it in.
Yeah, it's pretty long. I think I'd be standing here or sitting here for a good portion of the night putting it in. But it is a pretty powerful statement. And I think what it does is it says, whoa, we got work to do.
So I'll come get it from you and type it in. But would you please talk about the women's prison and if they have a similar program?
The Montana State Women's Program does not have a program like this. I think really also, even the men's prison in Deer Lodge, they talk a good game about, you know, providing resources and putting a plan together. But I just handed off to Connie a statement that one of the guys that I've worked with for 10 years, just got out of Montana State Prison. He has a diary of the attempts that he made at Montana State Prison to get help and to get to the place that he needed help to, and was thwarted all along the way. And so I think really, quite frankly, I'm going to tell you the Gallatin County's Detention Center reentry program is the Cadillac of all the centers. There are really no programs like ours across the state. And we've offered, we've talked to people who have been interested. I think somehow they feel they don't have the resources. One of the issues in Montana, maybe a lot of the states where there's a small, you know, it's a small rural state, is it's fine in Bozeman and Billings and Great Falls and Missoula where there are resources. But I happen to know the sheriff of Toole County and Donna Witt. And Donna has a 14-place little detention center, and they don't have the resources in that community to back up a person getting out. They don't have resources to hold people in that center. So I think that's one of the things that we are encountering in terms of resources. So there's really nothing commensurate with the reentry program in Gallatin County anywhere in the state of Montana. And one of the parts of our strategic plan is to share what we have with others. I think one of the futures might be this platform, teleconferencing, having people who get out, say in Shelby, which is Toole County, be able to talk to people on the phone, get the help, the mental health, the substance abuse help through this kind of platform. So I think we need to look at that a lot, because really, quite frankly, this does absolutely, a strong reentry program makes a difference. you can tell I'm kind of excited about it.
Do you see some other questions, Julie, that you can ask while I've finished typing?
Well, the last one was asking about COVID and how has that impacted your ministry
Oh,
and the
oh.
situation at the prison?
Well, golly jeepers, deeply. I really am missing. For a while, I went in with a mask and I'd clean the table off and the chairs and all of that. And then finally, at the detention center, they closed it, and Montana State Prison closed themselves down too. I am missing the up close and personal contact. You know, I can't see their faces. I can't see tears. I can't see, I can't see body language. And I'm just counting on them, to tell me where they are. Last week, I visited B-Pod and only one guy came, and it was God, all over the place because he was in tears. He needed a one-on-one visit. He didn't know me, but he ended up having a one-on-one visit with me. And we both admitted that, or said that it was certainly God who had interceded. So COVID has really cut into my heart, if you will. I really miss being with them, but I also know it's the right thing to do because that population is hostage to COVID, and we cannot bring it in. We just can't.
So that leads to a question that's kind of a morph from what was last in the chat and connecting with some of the questions that people submitted ahead of time in terms of how do you support the folks that are in the prison? Are there critical needs? Are there ways you have parishioners involved? Are they coming with you? Or are there care packages? What kinds of things can you do to support people in prison?
That's a really good question. It's really hard to get stuff in there. I'm going to tell you that. Any books, Connie and I send books all the time from Amazon. They have to come from a publisher. They've got to be wrapped. You can't really send stuff in, if you will. That's kind of a big fat no-no. Writing is very important. Writing letters, sending cards. Montana State Prison has, or the women's prison hasn't. I believe Montana State Prison and Deer Lodge for Men has the same thing. White paper, no cards, no frills, no nothing. You send it through, and so they're even concerned about stamps and stamps holding drugs on the back of it. So, but I think really, quite frankly, that Freedom in Christ Prison Ministry, going up there, being with the inmates is one way. I think if you have someone who is incarcerated and can get approved to go in and visit when they allow that, absolutely make that trip because they absolutely love that connection. So I think without taking stuff in, bringing stuff in, care packages, there are no such thing. You can't do that. But you can take yourself and you also can write. I hope that helps.
So if you were putting together kind of a tips and tricks for getting a prison ministry started, what would be some of the key themes or topics that you think somebody hoping to begin a ministry like yours would have, other than just, responding as boldly as you did to God's call?
Well, I think, first of all, if you feel called in this direction, get connected with someone who can hear you out and lead you to this place. I mean, really, quite frankly, I couldn't figure it out for 5 or 6 years. And finally, on that Sunday morning, I realized that I did have a contact. And so, really, quite frankly, I think it's if you really want to do it, you feel really called to do it, then work to identify someone that you can work through. There are also organizations that have, somebody mentioned Kairos, and they're going to be part of that. Cocodas is something that we do here. Curcio, that kind of thing. But I learned that really, quite frankly, it helped that I knew somebody that could get me to somebody to get it moving. And really, quite frankly, I think it was time, and the timing was really, really good. But if you have this passion, if this is something you really want to do, then figure out at your local level, if it's a local sheriff, it's a county attorney, if it's somebody who's in the legal system who can get you to talk to somebody. I also am a big fan of contacting state legislators and senators who can possibly help. I got into the Montana State Prison because I called my state senator and said, I can't get in there. And in 2 days, I had a call from the warden at Montana State Prison and signed up for the next volunteer training. So I think really, quite frankly, if you're determined, you will find a way. And you can call me anytime. I would be very happy to talk you through it, encourage you, because really, quite frankly, I think we deacons in the Episcopal Church have a powerful message. And that is the God of grace, the God of grace, not the God of law. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I'm happy to talk to you about that. But really, quite frankly, this is a very vulnerable, fragile population. And they need to hear that God is love. And they need not to hear that God is fearsome and wrathful and is going to get you.
Roxy, one question that came up was how the parishioners at the church got involved with some of your ministry, some of the things that you had them doing to support you. I'm thinking
Well, one of the ways that they really got involved with me was my survivors group. They became mentors for the survivors group. And this was a group that was a faith-based group of people that I was meeting at the Gallatin County Detention Center. We met weekly for 11 years. And basically, it was people recovering, and they had been incarcerated. And I had probably at one time, I had 8 some mentors who were working, who'd come to the meetings, who would build relationships and be careful, be smart, smart compassion. We're not chauffeurs, we're not employers, we're not ATMs, we're not, housing specialists. But what they did is they built relationships with them, came and cared. So they brought food, but most of all, they brought themselves and participated in the meetings and listened to people. The other thing that I did as a sidebar is that I brought all 3 district court judges to survivors. And one of my guys one night admitted that he had used the file that last week, and the judge who was present did nothing about it. Totally, but he became a honorary member. But the church has always been very supportive of what I've done. So whenever I've asked for them to participate or to perhaps provide, especially for my inmates that are now out, I call them about jobs. I've called them about housing. I've called them about, can we maybe put some money together to get some clothes? They are there, and they're very supportive.
Another question that comes from the registrants was a question about preparing folks for being engaged with folks that are incarcerated and supporting them, especially from a mental health perspective, as they're involved. Are there ways that you do debriefing or other kinds of support for the volunteers that are working with your program?
That's a really good question. I would say that I speak to them, the volunteers, about the people that we are trying to care about. I have the people who are the inmates, former inmates, tell their stories. And I think really from time to time, I have to say to people that there is no capacity here or a lack of capacity to handle some of the issues that we might encounter. And that includes me. That includes me. So I don't want my volunteers to put themselves into a place where if they would be in harm's way. And so I'm pretty careful about that. But I do still get calls from people in the parish about a child that is involved in substance abuse or a family member that's involved. And I'm pretty adamant about capacity, and they're getting help in the resources that we have in the community. And I hope that's helpful to anybody, but really, quite frankly, I'm not an expert in substance abuse or mental health. I care about it and I see it as a major issue. And I thank God that we have resources locally that I can tap into, and also advise people this probably isn't a good place for you to be.
Have you had any kind of pastoral care training, or is there anything that you would recommend to folks that would want to be involved in prison ministry?
Well, like many of us, I took clinical pastoral education years and years ago. I would have to say that a lot of what I do I've taken classes anytime I can with, solution focused counseling, some of those kinds of things. I did a workshop on being a good mentor that the state of Montana offered. So I look for classes like that where I can stay professionally ahead of the game. I just think that there are times when I don't know what to do. And so I look for resources, get the person to the resources, and not afraid to do that. That's the best thing for that person as well as for me. But I think there are, I don't know, personally, I don't feel that I have to be a counselor to do this, but I also don't have to be a SAP. Does everybody understand that? Pretty clear English? And so really, quite frankly, I'm kind of proud of the fact that I'm not a SAP. I will tell you, if there are inmates that come in and play me, and I'm going to be really honest with you all, sometimes I think, might be fun to play this person. And immediately I said, stop, and I'd never see that inmate again. So it doesn't happen all that often. And I've also run into several inmates that are really psychopaths. They're dangerous. And even the officers will say, please don't do anything with that person. So I think really, quite frankly, smart compassion works for me. I have boundaries. I adhere to them. One of the things that I will say about the Gallatin County Detention Center is that I cannot, as a volunteer, give out my telephone number, give out my address, do anything for them. Oh, would you call my mother? Would you call my wife? Would you do this? Would you do that? Nope, can't do that. And I up front say, please don't ask me to do anything. I'm here, I'm now, and I will be happy to be with you during this time. And they're quite respectful of that. Oh, okay. And I really say you have to go someplace else to get that help. So I think really the institution itself, I find, has very clear boundaries about what volunteers can do and what they can't do. And I'm glad for that. I think that protects me as well as the inmate. One of the things that I have a hard time with is putting all of these people into a con box. They're all cons. They're all cons, they're going to work you over. That has not been my experience. And as I said, if somebody tries to work me over, I probably don't see them again.
So Roxy, what is your relationship with the staff that's at the jail and the detention center?
I have been there 15 years and I have a very close working relationship with them. I abide by the rules. I don't pull any funny stuff. And I'll tell you what I do. And that is, if I see an officer treat an inmate disrespectfully, I call Brian Gutkin. I call the sheriff. But I think I have a wonderful working relationship with them. They're very good to me. They, even on the phone, good morning, Reverend Roxy. This morning I hear, we'll go get those guys or gals for you. So I have, and with Brian, of course, he's the guy that got me in there in the first place, so I'm close to him. It helps to be close to the sheriff of Gallatin County. Barry Lambert, the county attorney, and I are still good friends because we built a relationship putting the Fresh Start program together. So I have worked hard to have a respectful, strong working relationship with that staff.
I hate to say it, but we're at the end of our time, and there's still probably a lot more questions that I'm sure that we could continue. If you have anything that you want to have as a follow-up, please feel free to send me an email. That's to jlytle, L-Y-T-L-E, @bexleyseabury.edu, and we can pass that on to Roxy as well as what else we can do. I want to encourage any of you. Connie Campbell Pearson has been an amazing coordinator to work with. She helped us with questions every time we do this, and she's been coordinating invitations to folks to share stories like Roxy did tonight. So if you are interested in sharing your story as part of Deacons Talking, or if you have folks that you would like to recommend, you can also feel free to send an email to her, and I'm going to put her email in the chat box. I think I just missed it. Anyway, Connie, if you could put your email in the chat box so that folks could send a note to you. We'd love to have more voices be a part of the table. In closing, I'd like to share a Franciscan benediction that we usually use to close our Deacons Talking. And I think it's particularly helpful tonight as we reflect on the wonderful ministries that Roxanne has been doing and all of the people who have been incarcerated that need our support. So if you would bow your heads and take a moment. May God bless us with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that we may live deep within our heart. May God bless us with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that we may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless us with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that we may reach out our hands to comfort them and turn their pain into joy. And may God bless us with enough foolishness to believe that we can make a difference in the world, that we can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice and kindness to all of our children and to the poor. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank
So
you all again for joining us.
I put my name and my email in the chat. If you want to give a presentation, please don't hesitate to call me. Thank you.
Great.